In a quiet, unassuming neighborhood, Alex and Natalie appeared to be a couple straight out of fairy tale. They were well-liked and seemed deeply devoted to each other, their lives progressing steadily. Alex had known Natalie for just a year before they married, but their whirlwind romance felt as natural as it was passionate. To Alex, Natalie was his entire world. The love he had always dreamed of, someone who shared his vision of family and a life filled with love and loyalty. Natalie, too, seemed utterly captivated by Alex in those early months. She was stunning, charming, and kind, with a laugh that could light up any room. She effortlessly won over Alex's friends and family, bringing a vibrant energy to his life that everyone adored. When Natalie revealed she was pregnant, Alex was overjoyed. This was everything he had ever wanted. The news brought their families even closer, and Alex organized a small celebration, his heart brimming with pride and happiness at the thought of becoming a father. But beneath this surface of happiness, something far darker was brewing. Alex had met Natalie's cousin Jackson at various family gatherings. Jackson was friendly, confident, and someone Alex initially trusted. Living just a few blocks away, Jackson became a regular presence in their lives, always available for a casual chat or a visit. However, soon after Natalie's pregnancy, Alex began to notice subtle changes in her behavior when Jackson was around. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a fleeting smile or a lingering glance. But gradually, her interactions with Jackson grew more affectionate, more intense. He noticed how her hand might linger on Jackson's arm, or how she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. Despite his growing unease, Alex tried to convince himself it was all in his head. After all, Jackson was her cousin, someone she had grown up with. He brushed it off, believing their closeness was harmless. Over time, though, it became harder to ignore. He could sense a growing tension between them, a feeling he couldn't shake. On a few occasions, he glimpsed Natalie's text with Jackson, friendly, yet oddly familiar, with a playful, almost flirtatious tone. Still, Alex held his tongue, not wanting to seem insecure or jealous. Deep down, he wanted to believe in his wife's loyalty. But it wasn't just the texts or the glances. Natalie was becoming distant, pulling away in ways that left Alex feeling empty. Some nights, she avoided intimacy altogether, offering excuses that sounded increasingly hollow. The warmth of their early relationship began to fade, replaced by a cold detachment he couldn't comprehend. Her attention, once entirely his, now seemed divided, leaving Alex with a gnawing suspicion he couldn't quite put into words. One evening, Alex called Natalie to let her know he'd be late from work due to an unexpected meeting. Though he wanted to be home with her, he felt reassured knowing she was safe, likely relaxing after a long day. But fate had other plans. His meeting ended early, and he decided to surprise her with an early return, eager to spend a quiet evening together. As he approached their home, however, he saw something that shattered the world he thought he knew. Through the dim light of their bedroom window, Alex saw two figures, his wife and her cousin, Jackson. They were entwined, their movements unmistakable. The reality of their betrayal hit him like a punch to the gut. His heart sank, his hands freezing at his sides. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, the air leaving his lungs as the depth of their deception became clear. The sound of blood rushing his ears drowned out everything else as he opened the door, not caring if they heard him. Rage and sorrow consumed him like never before. Natalie scrambled to cover herself, her eyes wide with fear and shame. Jackson sat frozen, his face pale and silent, his guilt undeniable. Trembling with anger and betrayal, Alex demanded an explanation, his voice barely controlled. Natalie, her voice breaking, tried to explain, claiming it was a mistake and that the feelings between her and Jackson were complicated and confusing. She begged for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again. But Alex was beyond forgiveness. With a coldness he didn't recognize in himself, he asked a question he had dreaded since the moment he saw them together. "Whose baby is it?" The silence that followed was deafening. Natalie's hesitation, her inability to meet his gaze, confirmed his worst fears. Alex's heart hardened as he nodded, realizing the life he had envisioned was nothing but an illusion. In a steady, final tone, He told her he would file for divorce and expected her to sign the papers without resistance. His only demand was that she come to his mother's house to sign them, away from a home that now felt like a prison of betrayal. As he turned to leave, Natalie grabbed his arm, pleading for forgiveness and promising to change. But Alex couldn't bear her touch. The warmth of her hand now felt like a brand against his skin. He pushed her away, his patience snapping as he ordered her to let him go. Robert, standing nearby, tried to intervene, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder in a misguided attempt to calm him. The sight of his wife's lover daring to touch him was too much to bear. In a burst of fury, Alex shoved him away, his anger erupting in a moment of raw, unrestrained hatred. What began as a heated argument quickly turned into a physical fight. Alex, feeling cornered and betrayed, fought with a desperation fueled by months of suppressed suspicion and heartbreak. Natalie and Robert, terrified by the intensity of his rage, tried to hold him back, pleading with him to calm down. But Alex was beyond reason, his world spiraling out of control as he struggled to escape the nightmare his life had become. Just as Alex managed to unlock the front door, Jackson grabbed him, holding him back while Natalie frantically searched for a solution. In a moment of shared panic, they realized their secret. The dark, twisted affair they had hidden for so long was about to be exposed. The fear of losing everything drove them to a desperate act, one they would regret for the rest of their lives. In a final, horrifying moment, Natalie grabbed a metal rod from the kitchen. Driven by terror and an instinct for self-preservation, she struck Alex. The force of the blow echoed through the room. Alex staggered, his eyes locking onto Natalie's in one last heartbreaking moment of disbelief. As he fell to ground, his final words, a whispered, agonized, "You're pathetic," hung in the air like a curse. Natalie and Jackson stood frozen, staring at Alex's lifeless body. The horror of what they had done slowly sank in. They had crossed a line from which there was no return, their lives forever stained by the blood they had spilled. In the silence that followed, they shared a single, terrible realization. They would have to erase all traces of their crime, hide the truth, and find a way to live with what they had done. Natalie and Robert fled the scene, leaving behind their old lives and their darkest secret. When Alex was found dead, his family was devastated. In the close-knit community where he lived, friends and neighbors remembered him as a kind, hard-working man who had deeply loved Natalie and eagerly awaited the birth of their child. News of his tragic death left everyone shocked and heartbroken. What seemed like a simple domestic tragedy soon became a chilling mystery as investigators began piecing together the strange circumstances surrounding his death. The police were immediately suspicious of Alex's untimely and violent end, especially given the lack of forced entry or theft at the scene. Initially, investigators explored every possible angle, from workplace grudges to random crimes, but nothing added up. Surveillance footage and witness testimonies, however, gradually led them to a more disturbing revelation. On the night of the murder, CCTV cameras had captured a car matching Robert's parked outside Alex's home. Witnesses also recalled seeing Robert's car leaving the neighborhood in the early hours of the morning, long before the usual sunrise commute. As the police dug deeper, they uncovered the unusual closeness between Natalie and Robert, a connection that, in hindsight, seemed far more than familial. Natalie and Jackson had fled to another city, moving into a small apartment far from the prying eyes of their families and friends. They lived under the radar, hoping to avoid questions, but the guilt weighed heavily on them both. Natalie, despite her attempts to justify their actions, couldn't escape the memories of Alex's face. His last words haunted her day and night. Detectives finally tracked down Natalie and Robert after months of intensive investigation, thanks to a combination of surveillance footage, cell phone records, and testimony from friends who had sensed something strange about their relationship. When confronted by the police, both initially denied any involvement. They stuck to their story, claiming they had only been visiting Alex that night and had left after a brief argument. But as detectives presented the evidence, CCTV footage, phone call logs, and testimonies from neighbors, Natalie broke down. In a moment of panic, she confessed to the murder, tried to explain that it wasn't planned but a terrible accident fueled by fear. Jackson also admitted being present but attempted to shift more of the blame onto Natalie, claiming he had only wanted to help restrain Alex. Both confessed the truth about their relationship, a revelation that left even the most seasoned detectives disturbed. Their dark secret was finally out in the open. The trial became a sensation, with headlines detailing every lurid aspect of the case. As Natalie and Robert took the stand, the courtroom was packed with journalists, spectators, and Alex's devastated family. The pain of Alex's family was palpable, and friends who had attended the wedding just a year earlier struggled to reconcile the love they had witnessed with the betrayal that had ultimately destroyed him. Natalie's testimony painted a picture of confusion, claiming that her relationship with Jackson had begun as a misplaced bond of affection and slowly evolved into something she herself struggled to understand. She tried to portray herself as a victim of her own conflicting emotions, insisting she had loved Alex but felt trapped by the affair. She stated that Jackson had pressured her into keeping their relationship a secret, telling her it was too complex for anyone else to understand. Natalie spoke, recounting the events that led to Alex's death. The courtroom was silent, tense with shock and disbelief, when she reached the part where Alex discovered them together. Natalie broke down in tears, apologizing to Alex's family, but her words felt hollow to the public. She appeared self-serving, her apology seemingly aimed at saving herself rather than expressing genuine remorse for the man she had betrayed and murdered. Robert's testimony, on the other hand, took a different approach. He claimed that Alex had overreacted and provoked them, portraying himself and Natalie as victims forced into a desperate situation. He argued that Alex's violent outbursts had compelled them to act, framing the murder as an act of self-defense. However, his words were unconvincing, as the evidence painted a far darker picture, a story of two people who had killed to protect their secret. In a powerful closing statement, the prosecutor described the crime as a cold-blooded betrayal. He argued that Natalie and Robert had allowed their forbidden relationship to spiral out of control and, rather than face the consequences, chose to silence Alex forever. The prosecutor presented compelling evidence, depicting Natalie and Robert as deceitful lovers who had prioritized their selfish desires over the life of a man who had loved and trusted them unconditionally. When the jury delivered its verdict, the outcome was clear: guilty. Natalie and Robert were sentenced to life imprisonment, their twisted relationship now forever bound by the walls of a prison cell. Alex's death left a deep scar on his family and friends. His mother, who had been eagerly awaiting the birth of her first grandchild, was left to mourn not only her son, but also the future he had dreamed of. The community, which had watched Alex and Natalie's seemingly happy marriage blossom, was left in disbelief. How could something so dark have been hidden behind the illusion of love? For Alex's family, the trial brought little comfort. Though justice had been served, they were haunted by the knowledge that he had died in such a cruel and unexpected way, betrayed by the person he had trusted most. His mother often visited his grave, leaving flowers and small tokens, whispering words of love and sorrow, hoping he could somehow hear her. In the years that followed, the story of Alex's tragic death became a cautionary tale within the community. Friends of the couple, who had once celebrated their union, couldn't shake the feeling that they had missed the signs. They wondered if there was something they could have done to prevent it. The memory of Alex lingered, a reminder of the fragility of trust and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives. Inside their prison walls, Natalie and Robert faced the grim reality of their actions. Cut off from the world and separated from the people they had deceived, they had only each other to confront the depths of their crime. Their relationship, once fueled by secrecy and passion, grew toxic as guilt and resentment took hold. The weight of their betrayal gnawed at them, poisoned the connection that had once seemed so consuming. As time passed, Natalie's remorse deepened. Her memories of Alex, his kindness, his loyalty, his love, grew sharper with each day spent in confinement. She began to realize the full extent of what she had lost, the life she had thrown away for a fleeting, forbidden love. Shame and regret became her constant companions, the prison bars around her both literal and symbolic of the life she had destroyed. Robert, too, found himself changed. The thrill and passion that had once defined his relationship with Natalie now felt hollow, a bitter reminder of the price they had paid. He grew bitter and withdrawn, distancing himself even from Natalie. Both were haunted by Alex's final words, a whispered condemnation that echoed in their minds. In the end, Natalie and Robert's story became one of devastation, A love twisted by betrayal, a life destroyed, and a family left forever broken. The memory of Alex lingered like a shadow over their lives, a ghost they could never escape, a reminder of the innocence they had shattered in their selfish pursuit of desire. The tragedy of Alex's murder became more than just a story of betrayal and forbidden love. It was a lesson, a reminder of the devastating consequences of selfishness and deception. His memory endured, kept alive by those who loved him, a symbol of innocence betrayed and trust violated. For those left behind, Alex's story served as a painful but necessary reminder of the fragility of human relationships, the importance of honesty, and the high price of betrayal. And for Natalie and Robert, it became a life sentence far beyond prison walls, a sentence of unending guilt and remorse, a daily reminder that in their pursuit of desire, they had lost everything that truly mattered.